Coach Kenny Dillingham said 10 days out from game one against Morgan State, he wanted to name his starting quarterback for the upcoming season. Well, here we are 10 days out of the season, and he still doesn't know who's going to lead the Sun Devils.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Locked On Sun Devils. I'm one of your hosts, Parker Perrell. Phil Mulford cannot join us today, but he'll be back later this week. And I really wish that Phil could join this episode in particular because there is so much to break down on this episode. We have no QB1 decision, despite there being rumblings that would come out today. Zyrus Fiaseu is out for the season and what that means for the linebacker room. And how much confidence is there really in the secondary room with a couple of injuries, a couple of guys banged up, and overall a lot of question marks with that position group. But with that out of the way, the most pressing news is a couple of days ago, and really you could even trace back to the spring practice window, there was a clear set point in time. Kenny Dillingham was like, at least 2 weeks before the season, there'll be a starter named, eventually got shorter and shorter. Now it's then a week ago, it was 10 days. That was the mark that was set by Coach Dillingham and crew. And he said he hoped to get the formality out of the way on the 23rd or 25th or 24th. And then it quickly became 10 days from Morgan State. And here we are, just 10 short days away from game one of the season. And yes, it's Morgan State, but shortly following thereafter is a big match against Texas A&M. And you know you just have to have your starter name by a certain point, especially with the gauntlet that Arizona State has to go on early in their season. Sure, there's Morgan State week one, but then it's Texas A&M. Then you go to London the very next week. But overall about this decision, it was Cutter Boley's birthday. Everything was set up perfectly at today in practice. I mean, it's Cutter Boley, who has been hands down the best guy at practice. All the rumblings are he is the guy for ASU. And I guess I don't know if it's a little bit of a spoiler for his birthday. I wouldn't necessarily say so, but practice ends and Kenny Dillingham says, well, the decision will be made in the next week or so. Well, I wouldn't say it's a spoiler for his birthday because Kenny Dillingham went on to say it was the best practice that he has had. He's looked so fluid, so clean. And overall, today's practice or practice yesterday from those just tuning in when this episode releases, the practice was meant to match how well Cutter Boley could attack a defense, could go through progressions. And he said that Cutter Boley did a really great job, and it's the best that he's looked. And the lack of a decision at this point in time leads to a lot of questions. And to me, it shows that the decision not only that has been made clear by Kenny Dillingham at this point is down to Cutter Boley and Mikey Keene. But the question now is, why is there a wait? Is there uncertainty in this decision? And it's a big decision. And it's like an old wives' tale. You don't want to hasten into it. You don't want to hasten into a decision. You want to take your time. You want to make sure it's the right one. Because a starting quarterback's like buying a car. You feel bad if you drive one out and then you want to return it later. No, once you buy a car, you buy a car. You stick with it. You want to give it the best chance it has. So in this situation, you want to name the starting quarterback the right way. Well, Kenny Dillingham, he's had all this time, the coaching staff as well. And overall, through all the people that we've talked to, me and Phil, it seemed like Cutter Boley has been that guy. Chris Cartman has made a couple of statements about it on his podcast, respectively, as well, that how he thinks Cutter Boley is that guy. Ed Rubino, who we had on the show, Brad Denny, to a lot of Sun Devil media members and a lot of people that have been following ASU over the course of the spring and fall, Cutter Boley is ready. He is that guy for Arizona State this upcoming season. Now, why is there that much of a lack of haste to make Cutter Boley the starter this upcoming season at this point in time? Well, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a lack of confidence in Cutter Boley, because all we're hearing is that he's better, he's more efficient, he's ready. And that's not our words, even though we are saying it. It's the words of Kenny Dillingham, Marcus Arroyo, and the coaching staff. They're saying Cutter Boley is looking so ready for this starting job, but they're not really to hand them the keys yet. We haven't heard the word We haven't heard that he's ready to be the starter. To backtrack a little bit, we hear that he's looking more and more efficient, and that's what you want to see from a starter. That's what we've heard that Kenny Dillingham says he wants in a starter. He wants somebody that is a leader, somebody that can run the offense smoothly, but also cleanly, limit turnovers. And that's what we're seeing from Cutter Boley. Now, what this decision also might tell people, and this is one where it's a little thicker in the mud, a little in the weeds, if you will, so just bear with me for a second. It maybe shows people that Mikey Keene isn't that far out in the race as a lot of people would have thought, me included. I thought Mikey Keene about a week ago was hands down, he's not in the race anymore. I love Mikey Keene. He's a guy that I've been rooting for a long time. I mean, you can even go back to his days at Fresno State, even though he beat ASU there. He's a guy that I've been rooting for a long time. And now he's at ASU. It looked like in the spring, he was a guy that was going to be buried down the depth chart. Fall comes out and he's balling. He's a guy who makes a good race for the QB1 position, but Cutter Boley is just right there with him. And Cutter Boley is younger, but when it comes to Mikey Keene, he's a guy who has a lot of veteran experience. Now, you could look at this in a lot of different ways. For me, it boils down to two things. Are you looking at this from a talent perspective or a veteran leadership perspective? Because Cutter Boley is a player who has so much talent. Now, Mikey Keene certainly beats Boley in a lot of talent categories, but I wouldn't say overwhelmingly so. And that's only at this point in time. And I want to make that very clear. Cutter Boley, hands down, has so much more potential than Mikey Keene. And I'm not saying it is clear night as day that talent-wise Mikey Keene is better than Cutter Boley. No, I would say if Keene is at a 7, Cutter Boley is like at a 6.8, like on a scale of 10, because Cutter Boley is right there. And the potential that Cutter Boley has is at an A, maybe even an A+. Cutter Boley is at an A. Mikey Keene, this is the last year of eligibility. So in a lot of people's minds, it's also an excuse right there. Hand the keys to Cutter Boley. He's right there with Mikey Keene, and he has plenty of years to get better. Why not go ahead and hand it to him? Well, it's not really that simple. And this is something Dillingham has talked about. When there was the injuries last season to Sam Leavitt, Kenny Dillingham said, listen, the person who will be the QB1 for Arizona State will be the best quarterback possible. Jeff Sims, even though he's behind me right there in the flag right there, Jeff Sims is a player who, yes, sure, people might have wanted Cam Dyer in certain situations with the turnovers. He handed the keys to Jeff Sims because he gave the team the best chance to win. And overall, Mikey Keene, he could have that factor game one. He could be more game one ready when it comes to this season. Not that Cutter Boley isn't ready necessarily, just because of Mikey Keene's veteran experience. I mean, he's played college football for a long time on lots of different teams, has way more snaps, way more reps, that maybe that's the edge that Mikey Keene has over Cutter Boley. Now, we're hearing rumblings that the coaching staff is is pretty much all but ready for Cutter Boley. There's a lot of hype and some rumblings that like Cutter Boley is right there, that the coaching staff is just getting ready, but there's been no naming. And a lot of fans are upset about this, but I, for one, it's a little tight just because on one hand, I want their starting quarterback named. I am with the fans, but at the same time, I get it. You don't want to rush into a situation. You know that it will be named eventually because Kenny Dillingham has been postponing it, and he's been keeping fans updated. He says, hey, we'll get the formality out of the way. We'll get it announced within the week. And it's just a tough decision because Kenny Dillingham is around this group every single day, and he knows that it's on a timetable. But with the QB1 decision being made, there's still a lot of other decisions that have to be made. Like, for example, when it comes to ASU's linebacker room, they just lost Zyrus Fiaseu, a member of the Pat Tillman Leadership Council, for the rest of the season. This episode of Locked On Sun Devils is brought to you by Game Time. There's plenty of things worth seeing right now, but when it comes to Game Time, they can help you go to games, concerts, comedy, and you know that picking the event is easy. Buying the ticket, that's the annoying part. Wait times, confusing checkouts, surprise fees. That's why fans use Game Time. It has 3 easy features. There is upfront pricing. You get to see the view of your seat before you buy it. And there's exclusive savings right on the Game Time app. And here is the best part about it. My personal favorite part is not only the savings, I am a college kid after all, but you get to see the seat before you buy it. A couple of weeks ago, I was going up to Wrigley in an older ballpark. There are some polls in the way. I didn't know that. I was originally looking on one of the other apps, and there was a poll that would have blocked my seat. I went over to Game Time, and I saw the view. I was like, I'm not buying a seat behind a pole for $90 a pop. You got to be kidding me. And I moved on over. It really great, and it saved me a whole bunch of cash. So download the Game Time app and create an account using code LOCKEDON for $20 off for your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, so we get back to things here on Locked On Sun Devils. Zyrus Fiaseu, and this one really hurts me because he's a guy that I've had my eye on for a very long time. For those in the Sun Devil fan club for these past couple seasons, he has been a highlight player for Arizona State all the way back to the Peach Bowl season. He's a transfer guy that has really been a flag bearer for this Kenny Dillingham program. He had an interception in that Peach Bowl season to start off the year against Wyoming. That's a moment that I'll always remember because that was my second year on campus, and what a crazy year that was. And Fiaseu was a big leader in that team. Last season, suffered some injuries, named the Pat Tillman Leadership Council this upcoming season, was clear after Owen Long, after Martell Hughes. Fiaseu was that guy. But unfortunately, fate had a different play of cards, and Fiaseu will miss the entire season with a knee injury he suffered on this Saturday scrimmage. And you have to understand how heartbreaking this is, really, because Fiaseu just lost his 6th year of eligibility. He's already had one medical hardship waiver. And unless there is some major ruling from the powers that be, his college career might be over. And not only is this sad for him, but for Arizona State as a team, it's a major setback because, yes, Owen Long and Martell Hughes were in front of him, but Fiaseu was kind of a rocket man. That's the term that I like to use in these situations. Not necessarily the number one guy, but when Owen Long needs a snap off, when Hughes needs a snap off as well, you need a guy who brings in some energy, who sets a tone, and that was Zyrus Fiaseu. I mean, you saw it at practice. You could hear about it from the coaches, and when it was game time, Fiaseu was there. I love this guy. I love seeing this guy play. And it's just such a shame that we'll be robbed of seeing him play and suit up for the Sun Devils this upcoming season. And like we said, he only played 4 games this past season and was limited due to injuries, was getting ready. Tough setback. But looking at it from a team perspective is really what I want to do right now, because even though there's less depth, should fans be panicked for this upcoming season? Because ASU, you knew the 1-2-3 punch. Owen Long, Martell Hughes, Zyrus Fiaseu. With 3 gone, is it just a 2-headed monster, or are there people behind him? And, well, when it comes to filling in for Fiaseu, it's a mixed bag. Because there's a couple of these guys, I hope they sound familiar to some of the fans, because me and Phil have talked about them at length. Tristan Bacon, Isaiah Iosafa, Prairie Young-Blackgoat, and the transfer from NAU, Ramere Davis. Those are guys that ASU fans should really take note of, because I wouldn't say there's going to be a race for that final 3 spot, because as I'll go to in a second, it's looking like Brian Carrington, the assistant head coach and the defensive pass game coordinator, has made clear that they might change things up. They might change packages around because of the limited availability of the linebackers, or trying to rotate through guys and see what they're made of. But either way, when it comes to these guys, Dillingham had to mention that specifically Tristan Bacon and Ramere Davis, they've come along really well at practice. This is his quote. I thought they've had a couple of really good camps, and then getting a player like Prairie Young-Blackgoat was really positive. I think all those guys have really had really good camps and have gotten better, and they're going to have to step up. And that's the truth. I mean, that's as good as head coach speak as you can get. You know, it's a big stage. You just lost somebody, and they need to step up. Bacon, Davis, Prairie Young-Blackgoat, and Blackgoat's a player who not only has a great name, probably first team all name in the NCAA, but he's a player that there's been a lot of hype around. He's somebody who has the most experience on the Sun Devil team specifically, mainly on special teams, but late last season saw some reps defensively. And at practice, it's been clear that Prairie Young-Blackgoat has a certain edge to him that really gives him some fire and can really set up the Sun Devil team for some success moving on. And whether or not ASU is ready to make that jump and whether or not these players are ready to make that jump more specifically, we'll only see as ASU starts to scramble to get their linebacker position in order, more so the depth at that position. And speaking to that was Brian Carrington, the assistant head coach, as I said earlier, and said that Fiaseu's injury, it could lead the Sun Devils to play more packages with 6 defensive backs opposed to a base 5, as the secondary has looked like one of the better position groups. Now, we're going to talk about the confidence level to round out the show, but I agree with Carrington. I think this linebacker room, it's led by Owen Long and Martell Hughes, but it's not as strong depth-wise as you would like. Fiaseu was really a leader, and I'm not saying Bacon and Blackgoat and Davis aren't ready. They're not there yet. I'm not saying that at all. I think that they're players that could really go out there and really leave an impact on the football field. But more so, I think the secondary is just that good. That's the way that I lean. I think this linebacker room, it has 2 stars and a couple of guys that are ready to break out. But the secondary, that's a stud cast. That is a stud Sun Devil crew. But who knows? Maybe things change up around these next couple of practices. And one quick thing that I'll round out this conversation about Zyrus Fiaseu and him being out was, how does this potentially affect leadership? Because Zyrus Fiaseu is a member of the Pat Tillman Leadership Council, and I saw a couple of fans being like, well, how does this affect the leadership? How does this work with the player being hurt, player out of the season? Does this affect who guys look up to? And not to spoil it, but I just want to cut that talk. It's not going to affect it a whole lot. The spot could be in jeopardy, but Fiaseu is always a present force. And Kenny Dillingham, he made it clear at practice. This was his quote. Unfortunately for him, it's very unfortunate. He's on the Pat Tillman Leadership Council. He's still one of the leaders on the team. I think he knows that. I think he knows that he's going to still be a valuable member of this team. And you'll love to hear that from your head coach. And Fiaseu obviously knows that he's a member of this maroon and gold squad. Whether he's playing or whether he's on the sideline, whether he's helping out from a different perspective, Fiaseu will have a say in how this linebacker room goes. And that's what I want to see. I want to see Fiaseu really get involved in helping the development of these younger guys, Bacon, Davis, Blackgoat, and Iasafa. Those are guys that Fiaseu can really leave an impact on to fill in for his spot and help out Owen Long and Martell Hughes in the linebacker room. But as Brian Carrington was alluding to, this secondary is so good. And this upcoming season, could we see this secondary be the best position group on this Sun Devil squad? I think it has a case to. We'll break it down in just a second. All right, so to round out this show, secondary. What's the confidence level at this point in the season? Well, I don't want to prolong this conversation too long. It's one of the strongest groups. Even with an injury to Nigel Pringle, which, yes, why are Sun Devils dropping right before the season started? Not only dropping all over the place, but big position and big players too. Fiaseu, Michael Gardner, and Nigel Pringle a couple days ago. I think we talked about it on the show. So there's a lot of depth questions for ASU. And I think Nigel Pringle, even though he's a big loss when it comes to a player and a potential playmaker for ASU, a transfer from Arkansas, in my mind, he's not as big as a loss to the secondary room in comparison to Fiaseu to the linebacker room. And that's not a slight on Nigel Pringle whatsoever. To me, it's just a fact that this ASU secondary is far more deep than anybody expected. It's probably the best room on the defense, and there's an argument for this entire Arizona State Sun Devils team. I think the only group that is really head and shoulders above it is the running back room and maybe even the wide receiving room for ASU. And who knows, maybe even the quarterback room. It's still up up in the air, but I would say the cornerback room secondary room, is either second or third best on this ASU team. Now, it's one of the strongest groups still, and it's because of players like Ashton Stamps, Lyric Rawls, Josiah McGrew, Daquan Dunn, and Rodney Bimis Jr. And there's a lot of people saying that those guys are going to step up. Not just one of them, not just one guy, like we're hearing from this linebacker room. We're hearing that a whole bunch of guys in this secondary are going to step up throughout this season for Arizona State. So I'm going to spend this time breaking each one down one by one and how they can leave an impact for ASU. Now, we're hearing all sorts of rumblings about, this player is a little banged up. This player, now it's clean slate. Everything's going to be ready by week one. We're hearing a lot of positive signs about the secondary heading into the season. So I want to break things down with Lyric Rawls to start off. This is one of Phil's most favorite guys going into the season. Same with Josiah McGrew. And Lyric Rawls, he's a starting safety for the Big 12 the last couple of years. And he's really spent some good time. He's had a couple of good years, with Oklahoma State and Kansas. And this is a player that a lot of people have to have their eyes on because he's a guy who brings a lot of veteran presence to this ASU team. Similarly to why Mikey Keene is still alive in the QB race for ASU, Lyric Rawls has the experience. He's a player you can trust in certain situations because he has a lot of years under him. He has a whole lot of snaps that has him ready for football in the Big 12. And to me, that's one of the most important parts about this is it's not often that you have a guy who has a whole lot of college experience in your conference that has played at 3 different schools in your conference. And that's Lyric Rawls. He's played at Oklahoma State, Kansas, and now is at ASU. That's 3. And he has a whole lot of experience, not only playing college football, but in your conference specifically. And that could give ASU a certain edge, especially in the secondary room. Another guy who has some experience is Ashton Stamps, a guy that I really, when camp started, I should even go back to spring practice, I was initially like, okay, Ashton Stamps is good. I think I need to take a step back. I think I really need to calm down because he is great. Ashton Stamps is a great player. And he's a guy who has a lot of experience coming out of LSU. He had 12 passes defended in 2024. That ranked second in the SEC. And he's somebody who has some experience, is really gained a lot of respect from this ASU coaching staff, the ASU team as a whole, for his effort at practice, what he has done. And really, to take a step back real quick, what Stamps has done is a reflection of this entire secondary group because he's just been a natty. He's been annoying. He's been getting in there. He's been causing disruptions. And that's why this secondary group, it gets so many compliments by the coaching staff and reports about what how practice goes, about guys getting up there, getting interceptions, deflecting passes, just overall clogging up the passing lanes because they're doing a stand-up job. Everyone, really. All of these guys that we're about to mention, some better than others, but overall solid performances all around. And really, that's one of the best compliments you can get. If everybody on this secondary, from what I've heard, is doing their job. And that's one of the slogans of Kenny Dillingham's football team, or at least the past couple seasons, is do your job. And, you have to have fun doing it. That's another one of the slogans. But doing your job is probably the most important part of that slogan. I wouldn't say it is the most important slogan that Kenny Dillingham has, but it's definitely up there. Definitely is. And Josiah McGrew, another player who has been doing his job. And he appeared in 12 games last season at Florida International at FIU. For those that know Mr. 305's University himself. And in 2025, he had 68 tackles. 52 of them were solo tackles. And he had 4 interceptions to his name. That was for the FIU Panthers. And he was somebody who gained a lot of respect for what he did as just a true freshman. Now, with a year under his belt heading into 2026, it was crazy because the ceiling was already there. And I thought when a guy's ceiling is already placed that it can't go up. But seeing what Josiah McGrew has done at spring, how he's grown over the summer and now fall, it's clear that his ceiling is far higher than anybody expected. He's somebody who just has a second gear for the football, who's clearly ready to make a jump. And that's why a lot of people are putting their confidence in this secondary room. Because I just named 3 of the guys. Rawls, Stamps, and McGrew. They're players that are ready to make that jump. And I wish I could spend so much time breaking down all these guys' careers, but we really do not have the time to do that in these type of shows. But just know, if you ever want to have a good time, look at McGrew's interceptions. They really are just something to behold, not only at practice, but going back to FIU as well. Really highlight real stuff from the young man. And Daquan Dunn is another player who a lot of fans tuning into this podcast might be like, who? They might take a second chance, might check the transcript, maybe the captions, and be like, Daquan Dunn? And arguably, and this is shocking for a team that has a lot of highlight freshmen, Hugo on the defensive line, and then Carday Mack in the running back room, Daquan Dunn might be the most impressive first year on this ASU team. I say first year because freshman is used, and really, what's a freshman anymore in college football? NFL players are coming back, apparently. And I mean, maybe not, though. I hear some litigation might be happening. But either way, with everything that's going on in college football and the fact that players are older than they've ever been in this sport, to be a freshman and to already be at the level that Daquan Dunn is at, it's remarkable. And the coaching staff knows it, and they know that this freshman class is really special. And I think Dunn gets some reps this upcoming season. I don't know to what level, but either way, if Dunn's name is called, from what we've seen at practice and what we've heard the coaches say about Daquan Dunn, he's ready to make that leap. He's not ready to make that leap. He's ready to make some bounds, some jumps, some serious hops, and maybe a couple of highlight reel snags in there. Who knows? But a player that really is set for ASU this upcoming season is seen as like the heir apparent in a lot of people's minds to Keith Abney, the highlight secondary who made the NFL last season for ASU, is Rodney Bimage Jr. And he was on pace for a really hot end to last season before a couple of injuries, sidelined him for the last couple of games. Only recorded 12 tackles and 2 pass breakups on the season. He was right behind Javen Robinson, and a lot of people thought that he should have slid ahead of Robinson. I wasn't one of those guys. I think Robinson got a lot of slack his way. But either way, Bimage was always seen as he's that guy in waiting. Got some reps, as we said, got a couple of pass breakups, and came in huge for the Sun Devils in key situations. And Bimage is a guy who is, of all these guys, has spent the most time on the Sun Devils team. Makes sense. And he's a guy that I trust to really lock down any unit's best receivers. And I know there's guys that have tons of experience, Rawls, Stamps, and McGrew, but Bimage, from all the rumblings that I've heard, all the stuff that I've seen in practice, and maybe I'm just a person that likes players that have already been in the maroon and gold that I can trust, that I've already seen with my own eyes, I think Bimage is there. I think Bimage has made that jump, but overall, I don't want that to detract from the overall message that this secondary is deep. If you can't tell from the guys that I've listed, Ashton Stamps, Lyrics Rawls, Josiah McGrew, Daquan Dunn, and Rodney Bimage Jr., these are guys that will step up and already have stepped up at practice. They're just waiting for their name to get called when they step onto the field and are ready to leave an impact for ASU. But I hope this episode has left an impact on you. That will about do it for this episode of Locked On Sun Devils. Phil will be back tomorrow. But with that being said, there's going to be a couple more practices. Maybe an ASU quarterback, maybe a QB1 gets released. I mean, who knows? We'll see whose schedule is set in the next week. So maybe we'll hear, but make sure to leave your thoughts and comments down below. Me and Phil love seeing them. Like, comment, hit the notification bell, and set to all that fun stuff. Listening on audio, make sure your next listen is college basketball. This was another installment of Locked On Sun Devils. As always, I'm your host, Parker Perrell, and we will see you next time.